Welcome back everyone. Let's go ahead and hit on none other than the Samsung Galaxy A51 and see how this bad boy holds up in 2021. Now first of all, I will tell you, this is, not even that old of a phone. It just came out a little bit of time ago. We have just recently gotten the successor of this phone and it's going to be in-house very, very soon. I've already ordered it, so whenever I get it, I'm going to be talking about it. But this device is still actually one of those phones that I look at, and it's surprising to see how good quality of a phone Samsung was able to put out at this specific time and pretty much still see the capability behind it for sure. Now, if you want to pick one of these phones up, links will be down in the description. You can get them from there and help support the channel at the same time. Now, starting off with the front of this device, you can see that we do have a fairly large 6.5-inch Super AMOLED display, and it's a 1080p panel. Now, you do have a hole punch display, and when you look at a lot of phones in the market, the fact that this thing has this hole punch display at this price tag, it's pretty insane. And the whole entire mood I want you to kind of think about with this specific video and this phone is it's a budget tier device. It's not supposed to be like the S series of devices. This is supposed to be a fairly cheap phone, and you can pick it up for like less than $300, and I think that's a very solid phone. You're getting a Super AMOLED display, 6.5-inch 1080p panel that's strong enough as it is. You have a USB Type-C port on this thing. On the back, you do have a little bit of a plastic back, but it doesn't even feel that bad. When you look at a lot of phones nowadays, like the Samsung Galaxy S21, the Note 20, those phones all have plastic backs as well, and those are way more expensive than this device. So the fact that this one actually has a plastic back, maybe when it first came out, maybe it kind of hit a little different, but now because this thing already has, a playground, if you will, of other devices that also have plastic backs, I think this is actually making this phone a little bit more future-proofed, and it's pretty insane to me that, again, this thing was the budget phone of that time. There is no IP certification on this phone, which is okay, I think, because when you get to this level of devices with this price tag, it's kind of understandable, but you also have a microSD card slot on this phone. So that in and of itself is a huge thing, which makes me really happy about this device. The fact that it has that microSD card slot. When you look at all these other phones, as I mentioned before, they don't have that type of capability. No S21s have it, and it's very sad that phone manufacturers are taking it out, but this device has that capability, which in and of itself is amazing. In the hand, it doesn't feel too cheap, and I do think day to day, it's going to still feel like and look like a very premium phone for sure. So in terms of the outside and the body, that pretty much covers it up. But hitting on the cameras, this thing, I always like Samsung because they always just throw in a bunch of random stuff in their cameras for their budget tier devices. So this thing does have that quadruple camera setup on the back. So it has that 48 megapixel wide, 12 megapixel ultra wide, 5 megapixel macro, and then a 5 megapixel depth lens. And I think actually this is not that bad of a camera. You can do 4K at 30. Surprisingly, when you look at this phone's camera UI and you look at something like even like the Galaxy S21's camera UI, they are almost identical. And for those of you who have seen my Samsung Galaxy S21 comparisons I did not too long ago, you can see the same exact thing. These devices are so similar in terms of the UIs that it's pretty insane. And I definitely will tell you the fact that this thing cannot do 4K at 60 is it's not like a make it or break it, but it is kind of one of those things that is not probably going to age it extremely well, but you can do apparently 1080p at 120, which is pretty insane. So the back camera is actually not that bad. You don't have a telephoto lens, no 8K capability, but at least you have that ultra-wide sensor, which is something I'm really happy about. Had this thing only had a wide angle lens and then the macro and depth lens, that would have been different. But the fact that it does have that ultra-wide sensor, I think is a pretty cool deal for me. On the front, you have that 32 megapixel camera, and apparently you can do 4K at 30 on that phone, which I didn't even know you could do. So I think that's another plus point for this thing. I think the camera overall for the front and the back is solid. As I mentioned before, and I've said this for years now since this thing came out, or for like a year, it's actually a really solid phone in terms of the camera. It's definitely not the best, but for day-to-day tasks, I think a majority of people are going to be okay with it for sure. So in terms of that pretty much covers it up here. Now hitting on probably, I think, one of the weirder aspects of this phone, and then probably one of the best things about this phone. First of all, the software, as most of you know, One UI is not my cup of tea. It is not like my favorite version of Android out there. Oxygen OS is probably up there, but One UI is still good. I like how Samsung is improving, the overall life cycle of these devices. but on top of that, they're kind of improving the security updates as well. And I think that's another major aspect of this device. Does that mean this phone is perfect? Absolutely not, but I am glad that this phone does have, a lot of features built in. I'm glad that it still getting security updates, and the updates are kind of on time, which is good. And I don't really have too many complaints about that. I just don't really like the actual software itself. I feel like it's very clunky and it has a lot of bloatware. But really beyond that, if you're okay with it and if you're a fan of One UI, or if you're just okay with throwing a custom launcher on your phone, that can pretty much alleviate a lot of those concerns that I've had with this device. So that covers it in like a software standpoint. It's kind of like 50-50, either you like it or you don't. But I will tell you, one of my favorite things about this phone is actually the battery life. This thing has that 4,000 mAh battery inside of it. Now it doesn't have wireless charging or reverse wireless charging, but that is a massive size battery to have in a device like this. You're going to be getting, it's a big display, but it's a low resolution panel. It's not like a crazy power heavy device that doesn't have a crazy amount of performance and stuff inside of it. So I think the battery life on this phone is actually one of its better assets for sure. So it kind of goes hand in hand. The software, for me, is kind of like a downside, but the battery life is one of those things that kind of makes up for it in some ways. So that's another plus point in my opinion. So in terms of that pretty much covers it up there. Now ending it off with the performance, the Samsung Galaxy A51 had that Exynos 9611 chipset with a couple of different models. This thing had a ton of different models. So there was the 4GB of RAM options, the 6GB of RAM options, then the 8GB of RAM options. And I think I had the 4GB of RAM option. So keep that in mind. And I can definitely tell you, this is pretty much what I'll tell you. For the price tag, it's not that bad of a performing phone. It's definitely not up there with, I wouldn't even say it's up there with the Galaxy S10. I feel like the Galaxy S10 is a far faster phone. For this device, with the type of capability and for the type of price tag, I think this phone is actually not that bad of a performing device. And even now, compared to something like an S21 or whatever other device you're going to look at, this is not a bad performing phone. I think some people are out there thinking that it is. For the price tag, it's not. It's the same way that I would look at something like a OnePlus Nord, or even like maybe like a Galaxy S9 in this day and age. Well, when you consider the price tag and the age of the phone, it kind of, you have to kind of give it the benefit of the doubt. In this specific case, I really do think that the Samsung Galaxy A51 is a pretty good performing phone. If you're doing light performing type of tasks, if you're trying to do like a temple run game, or you're trying to do Fruit Ninja, or you're trying to do like writing out a paper on Google Docs or something like that, then you're going to be perfectly fine. This phone's going to be able to handle it. I think the bigger issue with this phone is if you're trying to go into like heavier intensive stuff, like if you're trying to do like multitasking or split screen multitasking between a ton of different heavier intensive apps, then you may actually experience some issues. And this mostly is because of the RAM. It's not even because of the chipset. Even though the chipset isn't that crazy, the RAM is the biggest issue. So if you can get by with 4GB of RAM, then go for it. But I would recommend going to at least a 6 or an 8GB of RAM option. Those things are going to be giving you a much better performance, and it's going to be kind of like a no-brainer in so many different ways, if I'm being honest. So in terms of that, I would definitely say the performance is a plus point. It's a good thing about this phone. It's not like somewhere when I would look at this device and be sad about it or something. This device's performance is pretty solid in my opinion. So in terms of that pretty much covers the performance side of things. Now to kind of sum up this video and to answer the question, is the Samsung Galaxy A51 still worth it in 2021? Well, this is what I'll tell you. I think the Samsung Galaxy A51 is still a solid phone for so many different reasons. For the price tag, it's a solid option. It's definitely not the perfect phone in the world. It definitely isn't perfect, but I think for the price tag, it's not a bad option. So first of all, the price tag, dude, it's like less than $300 in so many different areas. That is almost like a no-brainer to me that this thing has that much capability on a device like this, which is insane. On top of that, the body looks so good. It still looks so premium. The plastic back was one of those things that rubbed me the wrong way at first, but I've gotten used to it, so it's not really that big of a deal. You have a micro SD card slot on this phone, which is, in my opinion, a humongous asset. When you look at all these other devices, I mean, dude, like, you look at the Galaxy S21, the S21 Plus, and S21 Ultra, those things don't even have micro SD card slots anymore. This device still has that capability, and that in and of itself is another plus point in my opinion. On top of that, the cameras on the back, even on the front, aren't even that bad. And when you look at something like a OnePlus 9 that just came out, that thing has a pretty good back camera, but the front camera, I don't know what they do with it every single time. It's just never that good. In this specific case, it is an improvement there, which is cool. The battery life is pretty good as well, and there's just not that many complaints. My main complaint is really like if you are a heavier intensive person, if you want to play heavier intensive games, then you should probably get the 6 gig or 8 gig of RAM option. Or if you are not a fan of One UI and like the software lifecycle and stuff, then it may be better if you get like a Pixel or a OnePlus or something like that. But other than that, I really do think the Samsung Galaxy A51 is a pretty good pickup in 2021, and I would probably recommend it if you're looking for a phone for a cheap price. This is not a bad phone in my opinion. So in terms of that pretty much covers it up. If you guys have any other questions or anything like that, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. Every single subscriber that we get really does count, so it means so much if you guys could hit that. Also check out the other links down in the description as well. My Twitter, my Instagram, my other channels. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.